All right, Steeler fans, welcome back. It is time for the second half of the Steelers preview podcast, which means it is time for sometimes my favorite game, sometimes my least favorite game, which is called the over-under. Are we scratching regular season records and starting fresh like the
Of
Steelers
course
and all
you
this?
guys want to do that. Of course you do. I mean, we
I don't
honestly
care.
we can keep two different totals if we want to.
No,
Let
it's
her
fine.
ride.
We can let her. Yeah, let's ride.
Because I didn't say it, in the post-game show or anything, but I told you guys before the post-game show, you're staring at perfection right now because I actually got all 5 of them last week. Now, of the ones that count, I did not pick the all 3 of us missed the over-under of the score because we all went over, and that was a big fat under based on the rain and everything. But at the time we were picking it, we thought it was going to be snow. Right. And as we've talked about, snow is better than rain. My brother and I talked about it on Tuesday night. So I want to ask you guys that question real quick. Snow versus rain to play football in. What's better to play in?
I would say snow. It also depends on the surface, though, too.
Yeah.
Because if you're on turf, turf can get really slick in the snow, and it's a little different. Grass surface, definitely. I would probably say grass. It would be snow, but then you think about handling the football, catching the football. That's tough. I'd say snow, though. Brian, what do you think?
Last week, when in defense of Mason Rudolph, I was talking about how I would rather play in snow than in rain. So I'm going with snow, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
All right. I'd rather play in snow than rain, especially cold rain. That's like, why even bother? It should just be snow. So sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. So what are the totals?
All right. So last week I was perfect. I was 5 for 5. You each went 2 for 5. So I increased my lead. I am sitting with 41 points overall. Second is Jeff with 35 and Brian right behind him with 34.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
So how many do you have for this week, Jeff?
6. It's a race for second place.
6 is good because that means you could catch me if we have all our opposite picks. But yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But what's even better is that you could catch me over the next several weeks because the Steelers will continue to play.
That is true. All right, you all ready? Let's start this over-under. We are going no individual stat lines here. Ooh. Everything is team-based for the entire over-under. All right, so let's start off with Pittsburgh Steelers rushing yards. Over-under 150.5, 150.5. Brian, we'll get started with you.
Going to go with the under here.
All right.
I just don't expect them to. I expect them to do well, but I still think 150 is a very good mark for a team. So I think they're going to be, if they win, it's going to be because of their success on the ground, but does not mean that it has to be over 150. I think 150 is actually one of your highest that you go ahead and put out every year, and that's the every week, and that's the rushing yards.
Dave, over under.
Oh, I am going over on this big time. If you remember the last time there was this kind of wins in a game in Buffalo, that was against the New England Patriots, where they passed the ball twice the entire game. So I think there's just going to be, I'm not saying it's going to be a great average. I just think there's going to be a whole lot of rushing attempts. So therefore, I'm thinking it's going to go over.
The Buffalo Bills defense is not bad. I want to get that out of the way right now. But if there is a weak link, I think it is in their run defense. And I think that the Steelers' offensive line they're moving bodies. They're doing a good job getting pushed. I'm taking the over. I'm taking the over here mainly because I think they have to hit the over if they want to win this game. Now let's go to the flip side. The Buffalo Bills rushing yards. Again, total team rushing. I've got that line set at 130.5. Brian, over under.
Over.
All right,
they've been running the ball really well, and Josh Allen is going to do it himself, give you about 20 or 30 himself.
Okay. Dave?
Okay, 130. Now, the Bills have won 5 straight games.
Yes.
How many times have they rushed for 130 yards in those 5 games?
I'm going to say that only one of them against Dallas. Wasn't that a game they rushed for over that?
They rushed for 266 yards.
I was going to say, because Josh Allen threw for like 97 yards in that game. He didn't even eclipse 100. So is that the only one?
That's the only one. The last couple of weeks have been 127, 128, so right around it. But so Brian, you said over. I think I'm going to have to go over too, just because I think we're going to see more rushing attempts from the Bills than you typically would in their offense because of the wind. Now, if this game gets moved or the weather forecast calms the crap down and gives us some real football conditions, then it's going to be a whole different story. So I just have to base on the information we have now.
I'm going to go again with Josh Allen. He's the wild card here. I don't think the Steelers are going to allow any of their running backs to get to go off, so to speak. Josh Allen scrambling does scare me. I'm going to go with the over as well. Next, let's go Steelers turnovers, turning the ball over. We'll set that line at 1.5. Brian, over under.
I'm going to go under. They've been holding onto the ball well.
No, don't say that to Jalen Warren.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. You said under, Dave. What about you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, last week in the monsoon, it was bad, and they hopefully learned something from it. If the Steelers are going to win this game, it's got to be under. I don't see how they could have multiple turnovers. If they do, then we're going to probably be talking Sunday afternoon and next Thursday night as some pretty disappointed fellas if they do that. So I'm going to say under because bottom line is they have to.
I agree. I'm going to go under. If they turn it over, I think it'll only be once. Hopefully it's 0. And the next one is the same line for the Buffalo Bills. Same thing. Buffalo Bills team turnovers. Brian, 1.5 is the line. You taking the over or under?
I'm going to take the over here. I really think that Josh Allen has a few interceptions in him, so I think there's 2 there.
All right, Dave.
Yeah, I'm going to go over as well. Don't know if it'll be all the interceptions just because of how often they'll throw the ball. But once again, if the Steelers are going to, the best thing they can do to win this game is to win the turnover battle. There, I got it.
Right. There you go. I'm going to go under. I think that there's less likelihood if they throw the ball, then there's a chance that they go over, but I don't think they throw it as much. So I'm actually going to go under. I think Buffalo turns it over one time as well.
And now when it comes to the Steelers turning it over, I just want to say real quick, the biggest thing that I fear is the strip sack. Buffalo has really gotten after the quarterback this year. They have more sacks than the Steelers. So that's, to me, that's the most concerning of them all.
Right. Okay, let's go with the next one. Pittsburgh Steelers passing yards. I've got that line. And again, I just didn't know where to put this thing based on the weather conditions. I even looked back at week 18, those different weather conditions. I went with 135.5, thinking that the wind's going to wreak some serious havoc on the passing attack. So, Brian, you taking the over or the under?
Absolutely the over, especially if they're behind, they're going to have to throw the football.
All right, Dave?
I'm going over, but I think you're looking at 3/4 of those yards being yak. I think you're looking at dump off passes to the running backs. To me, I wouldn't try to run the edge in this game. I would run the middle and I would short pass the edge based on the wind and just everything. And get rather than ask Najee Harris to beat the guy to the corner, we've seen that's not worked. But if you can get him out there in some space, throwing the ball to him behind the line of scrimmage, Mason Rudolph showed last weekend that he can muscle the ball through bad weather on short passes. My goodness, he did it one time with Kyle Van Noy hanging on his arm. Yeah. So that, to me, I think if they hit those passing yards, it's going to be a lot of short passes to, I mean, even if they use short passes to the wide receivers, I think it's going to be that they need to get some yak with that.
I agree. I'm going to go over as well, but not by much. Not by much.
That was a hard one because it's not going to be a lot.
Ground and pound, but I got the over. The last one, which is going to be interesting, and I added this right before the show started. Missed kicks. Okay, so this is any kick, extra point, field goal attempt, doesn't matter. A missed kick. I've got the line at 1.5. Brian, over, under, missed kicks.
That wind is going to be absolutely crazy. I don't care how good Boswell and Bass are. I've got to go with the over.
Okay, Dave?
I'm going to go with the under because I think they're going to be very, very thoughtful both teams in when they choose to kick it.
I'm gonna go under. I think you might see a lot of conversion attempts if the wind's really howling, because they might say we'll take our chances of getting 2 compared to trying to kick a field goal even as short as an extra point. So there you go. That's the over under game. We will see how those pan out. A lot of those could lead to victory or defeat for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we shall see. Okay, the line that I have in front of me, I know that some books have adjusted this down to 9.5. I've seen as low as 9. I've seen as high as 10.5. But when I looked, it was 10, and the total is in the Buffalo Bills, obviously giving 10 with a total at 36. 36. So, what are we thinking for predictions? Brian, we'll start with you.
It's hard for me to pick the Steelers in this game. After watching Buffalo play last week, they play with reckless abandon. They don't care. This is going to be one of those games where when you get away with stopping them on 3rd down, you still got to stop them on 4th down, because they will be going for it a whole heck of a lot. And Josh Allen's a lot harder to stop in those situations than a lot of other players. So I know the Steelers do well with 4th and short, but this scares me in this game. I do not, man, if I'm betting in Vegas on this, I'm going to go ahead and take the Steelers and the points. But when in reality on the scoreboard, what counts the most, I think it's going to be Buffalo 24, Pittsburgh 18.
What was that score again, Brian? 24 to 18?
24 to 18.
Okay.
And that's an over.
It is. It is. All right, Dave, your prediction. What is it?
All right. I said this on the Scobro show because I don't give my prediction there. Rich does. Everyone does at the end of the show. I bring them all up. I missed a couple that were at the very, very end of the show last week. I apologize for that. But I said there, I said, you know what? I'm enjoying this and having so much fun. I'm going to pick the Steelers because why not? You're in the playoffs. Anything can happen. Can the Steelers win this game? Absolutely, they can win this game. The only question is, will they? So to me, because it's the playoffs, I'm going to, if I'm running 100 scenarios in my head, and even if I can only get 25 of them that the Steelers win, I'm going to roll with those 25. That's what I'm going to do. That's the way it is. So I think it's going to be a little bit more scoring than what people realize, but I think it's going to be because the teams are going to have success running the football and with the short passing game. So I have the Pittsburgh Steelers 24, the Buffalo Bills 20.
Wow. So you're a hard over as well in your total. So that's interesting. So I see this game a little bit different. Now, I am the only true Steeler fan on this panel, so bear with me here. But I do like the Steelers to win. I know that's the shock of the century. I think this is going to be a really close game. And I see this being more of with the gusts of wind, I do not see it being a high scoring game. I think this is a game that does set up well for Pittsburgh. It equals the playing field, levels it a little bit if you think that it was slanted one way. And if it does involve the short passing game, if Gabe Davis isn't playing, I like the Steelers' skill set in that regard better than the Buffalo Bills. Stephon Diggs is fantastic, but if you can't throw it down the field, it's going to limit what he can do. I think the Steelers win this game, and I actually think it's a missed kick that actually sends them to the divisional round and a trip to M&T Bank Stadium to play the Ravens. I've got Steelers 17, Buffalo Bills 16. So I think this is a situation where they might even score a touchdown and that you think it's going to be a game-tying score, and a missed extra point might be it because of the win, because who knows what else is going to be happening there. I think this could be a wild one. I don't think it's going to be high scoring, and that's why I've got the under. So I've got 17-16 Steelers.
I mean, bottom line is, I think I have the biggest margin of victory for either team. No, Brian does. He has 6 points. I have 4 points. Jeff has 1 point.
Yeah.
What's going to be important for both teams in this situation is you must keep the game close.
Right.
It's a game. If one team goes up multiple scores, you're going to have some problems if you're dealing with this crazy wind that they say they were going to be dealing with. So both teams are going to be keep it close, can't let it get out of hand. See what happens.
I mean, you think about the last 3 Steelers playoff games, they've surrendered over 40 points in each. And a lot of those got out of hand real quick. Cleveland, 2020, Jacksonville, 2017. Kansas City really didn't. They really didn't.
No, that's where the offense crapped the bed for
they
so
couldn't.
long.
Well, TJ Watt scored the touchdown, didn't he?
And the Steelers did. The Steelers defense did what no other team had done. I keep saying this. No other team all season had held the Chiefs scoreless for 5 straight drives. And the Steelers did that to start the game. And all they held was a 7-0 lead where the defense scored 7 points.
Right.
And that's why they lost that game.
We will see how this goes. Let's get to some trivia. Brian, do you have some?
Yes, I do. I have one of my typical ones where it's going to go ahead and go back in time a little bit. So, Jeff, you can sit back. But
right.
And then we're going to have a little bit of more recent stuff. So we're going to go back to the number 8 sacker in Pittsburgh Steeler history, played for both the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was drafted by the Steelers, or I don't know. Actually, I don't know if he was drafted by the Steelers, but he's originally a Steeler for many a year, got all those sacks for the Steelers, and ended up with Buffalo at the end of his career. Number 8 on the list. Who is he? 59 sacks.
Okay, so you got to say this. It's got to be since the 80s because of when stats became official, correct?
Yes. Now, if you look at the one with the sacks with Joe Green and those guys before this change, this guy is number 8 with Joe Green and those guys included. He is since the 80s, but he would be number 6 if it was
if you took those other guys out, he'd be even higher for the Steelers.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Come on, Jeff. You know this. You know who it is.
I wasn't listening.
No, you can't say you weren't listening. Come on.
Seattle has 2 losses.
Oh,
2 losses, and they need a new coach.
Jefferson Bartholomew Hartman. I know. I think I know this. It's a defensive lineman, isn't it, Brian?
Yes, one of my favorites.
And he wore it. I'm helping you, Jeff. I'm trying to set it up for you. He wore number 93, didn't he?
What you talking about, Jeff?
Come on, Jeff.
John Funkner says Keith Willis.
That's correct.
What you talking about, Willis? Keith Willis was great for that team. Wow. So yeah, he ended up in 1992 with Buffalo. So he did not make it to the Bill Cowher era, but was great under Chuck Noll. Now, in the Mike Tomlin era,
that was really, really good that I could remember that they went to Buffalo.
Yep.
I'm not saying
in the Mike Tomlin era, 7 draft picks ended up in Buffalo after their time in Pittsburgh. These guys were drafted in the Mike Tomlin era. Who were they?
Jeff knows one of them.
I do.
Come on, Tyler McCabe.
Obvious one. Dirty Red from Temple.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. End up in 7. Oh, geez.
One's a Pro Bowler that was not exactly a Pro Bowler in Pittsburgh.
Oh, that would have been oh no, he wasn't a Pro Bowler. But I got another one. I'm thinking of offensive lineman. It was Urbic, right?
It's Urbic. That's number 2.
Because he never played. He never actually played for the Steelers. Because isn't he the one that got beat up by Ramon Foster?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeff, I'll give you a hint on one of them, not the Pro Bowler. Dave, think about the Pro Bowler.
Okay.
Think of the movie Old School. And a nickname.
Oh, Frank the Tank. Frank Summers?
Frank Summers, yeah. UNLV.
I almost said Frank Webb.
That would have been awesome. Come on, Dave.
So that's 3, right?
You got to know the Pro Bowler. I kind of thought he was hands down in Pittsburgh, and then he went on to be a Pro Bowler elsewhere.
But he was a Pro Bowler with Buffalo?
I don't know if he was a Pro Bowler in Buffalo. I don't think he was, but he was a Pro Bowler and a Super Bowl winner somewhere else.
Oh, well, that was Emmanuel Sanders. Didn't he finish up in Buffalo?
Yes, it is Emmanuel Sanders who I was looking for.
Yeah.
The other Jeff got a tough one. The other one, well, you guys ended up with 4 of them, so I'm going to let you off the hook because the rest are really tough. You've got Shamarko Thomas.
No,
he ended up in Buffalo.
Yep.
University of Syracuse.
Yep.
Yeah.
Shamarko
for him.
Chris Scott, who's a lineman. He was drafted, I think, for that 2010 team, if I'm not mistaken. And the other one, Cresden Butler.
No, wouldn't have gotten
defensive
that.
back.
Wouldn't have gotten that.
Wait, weren't they both? I mean, holy cow. Wasn't Scott, Butler, and Sanders all in the same draft?
No. Yeah. That 2010 draft had about 12 guys.
But I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known that those other 2 guys played in Buffalo. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah.
So
and Urbic was on Urbic and Summers were in the 2009 draft, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. There you go. That's my stuff.
Then you got Tyler Medikevich from the 2016 draft.
Dirty Red.
There you go. All right, Dave, your turn. Go ahead.
Okay, here we go. This is some numbers I was looking into when it came to the Steelers. Now that the season is over, and I was just curious how they. It's funny because I tweeted this out, and then like a few hours later, Dale Lally tweeted out like he saw my tweet and copied my numbers. But now I don't. So I just thought it was interesting. But what I was looking at was how did the Steelers do this year when they faced other teams that qualified for the postseason? How did they do? How did the Steelers finish? Well, the Steelers actually played, they tied for their most games ever for how many times they played a team that made the playoff this year. And the Steelers went 5-3. So they had a winning record. They had a 62.5% winning percentage. When is the only season the Pittsburgh Steelers defeated every team that they played that made the playoffs that year? They've only done it one time in their franchise history, going all the way back to 1933. Have the Steelers won every game in a season where they played a team that made the playoffs that year?
2008.
I'm going to go with 2004.
2008, the Steelers played 7 playoff teams. They were 3-4 that year.
Yikes.
Against teams that made the playoffs. But in 2004, the Steelers played 3 teams that qualified for the playoffs, and they beat them all. That is the correct answer. So I also took it a step further and said, well, what about if a team that, had a good season but didn't quite make the playoffs? What about a team that had a winning record? Would that kind of change things? If you want to argue this, the Steelers may have played their most difficult schedule ever this year because they played more games this year against teams that finished with a winning record than they ever have any other time in the franchise history. They played 13 games against teams that finished above 500, and they went 8-5. The most ever they've had beyond that was 12. And that, hold on, I got to look that up real quick. I got to check. And that was in, any idea what season that might have been when they played 12 games against teams that made the playoffs? You probably aren't going to get it. I'll tell you. It's 1996. They played 12 games. And in that, they went 7-5 that season. But there's also one other season where the Pittsburgh Steelers went perfect, 100% winning percentage against teams that had a winning record. It's happened one time in franchise history, and it wasn't 2004. Do you know where that would have been? Let Jeff guess first, because I think Brian might know it.
I don't know.
Okay, go ahead.
You can go ahead and guess.
I'm going to go 1978. That team was 14-2.
1978. Well, in 19, let me bring it up here. In 1978, that team played 9 games against teams that had a winning record. They went 7-2.
Oh,
So this is when you got to think about it. Where would there be a season where the Steelers beat every team that had a winning record, but they didn't beat every team that went to the playoff? You've got to think it through. When would the Steelers have played a team that made it to the playoffs but did not have a winning record?
1982.
That would be 1982. Why is that, Brian?
Strike. They only played 9 games that year. It was a strike.
And what else did they do with the playoffs that year?
They the playoff, there was expanded playoff. There was 16 teams in the playoffs out of 28.
Yep. They took 8 teams to the playoffs.
Yeah, it was a tournament. It was fun.
Yeah. I've got to go back and study that a little bit more because I missed that year. Because I've said before that the NFL was never had a number 7 seed beat a number 2 seed, but I'd have to go back and check out the exact seedings in 1983 because that's the only 1982. It was in 1983, but it was 1982 season with some of these because
you had some major upsets. I know one of the major Pittsburgh and San Diego were 4-5. I will tell you that. And I think the Jets might have been a number 7 seed that beat the number 2 Cincinnati. I think it was 7-2 in that game.
The Jets did beat
sure.
Cincinnati. I'm not sure what the tiebreakers are because the Dolphins were 7-2.
No, that was a 7 seed versus a 2, I believe.
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm saying they had the same record as the Bengals. I can't go back and actually see what the seeds were right now. So that's
the Dolphins were the number 1 seed in that game.
But it was pretty interesting to see that this year's Steelers team, they played a lot of teams. Now, granted, you could say, well, more teams made it to the playoffs because of the expanded playoffs. But when you look at the winning record, and now it also helps to have a winning record that you don't finish 500 because there's not a number of games. But for the Steelers to go or to have a winning record or to have more than a 60% record against teams that made that had a winning record was pretty impressive. So it's interesting. The last time the Steelers actually had a winning record against teams that made the playoff or that had a winning record at the end of the season was in 2020, but they had a lot of those pretty early. To even have to go back before that, you'd have to go back to 2017. So, pretty, yeah, you can talk about the bad losses, but the Steelers do have some good wins on their resume for the 2023 season.
Hey, Dave, I looked that up, and the 7-2 game was actually New England at Miami,
and Miami won that one.
That game. Yes. Now that was a few weeks after the famous John Smith snowplow game. And that's one of the reasons they were the seeds this way, because that was also about 2 weeks after your brother Rich's first ever game watching a Pittsburgh Steelers game against New England, which happened right after Christmas. But the week before that snowplow game happened. The Jets in Cincinnati were a 6-3 seeded team. It was 44-17. And the Raiders were the number 1 seed, 27-10 over Cleveland.
Yes. So there's never been a 7-2 or an 8-1.
No.
That's the only year they ever played a 1.
Yeah, the 8-1s were both Cleveland losing to the Raiders and Detroit losing to the champion Redskins.
Yeah, but bottom line is, Steelers can make history just like they did back in 2005 when they were the first 6 seed to win the Super Bowl. You're like, they could be the first 7 seed to win the Super Bowl. They can do better than that. They could be the first 7 seed to win a game in the playoff. So let's do it.
Yeah. Let's do it. Indeed. All right. Let's do some final thoughts. Brian, go ahead.
Man, I love it. The air smells so much better food tastes better when the Steelers are in the playoffs. Everything, your kids are less annoying. My wife is less annoying when the Steelers are in the playoffs. It just feels so good. I'm so glad we're here. I'm so glad we're still talking about it. The only thing about it is then reality hits you in the face. And we're going to find out for real how Mike Tomlin motivates this team. And I wouldn't be surprised if he has this team completely motivated going into this game. And motivation goes a long way. Now, you have to get it right on the sidelines and on the field as well. But if you can get up on Buffalo early, you're going to have a lot better chance than if you get behind them. And the Steelers shown me the last couple of weeks that they can get up early. Did I pick against the Steelers? Yes, because I'm going to pick against the Steelers a whole heck of a lot because of not because of pessimism, because of my superstition. And you're hearing that a lot lately. But I really feel excited about this game. I'm glad it's not in prime time for a lot of reasons. But I think a nice, good old-fashioned 1 p.m. game will do them well. And I think the last time they played a wild card game at 1 p.m. was a game that Dave was at in freezing cold weather, and it was against the Miami Dolphins, and they went crazy. So here we go, Steelers. Here we go. I cannot wait.
Good job, Dave Schofield. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's the last time they won a 1 p.m. game. I think against Jacksonville might have been 1 p.m. in 2017.
That's what I meant. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, that's what you meant. I was at that game too. So bottom line is we get to watch another Steelers game. I'm so grateful for everyone that I can get now. So let's watch another one. You know what? Maybe we even get a chance to watch another one. That's what I'm really hoping. But I kind of tipped my hand at this a little bit on. I think it was on Stat Geek. I was saying it, and that is, what I went out of this game is I don't at 4:00 on Sunday. I don't want to be sitting on my couch watching this game. I want to be pacing in front of and behind my couch during this game because I'm wanting to say, can the Steelers pull it off? The Steelers, can they hold this lead? Oh my goodness, they have the ball. Can they score and do whatever they do? But I want to see it be something where I'm like, come on, hold on. Because I'm sorry, even if the Steelers come out and somehow run the ball like crazy and even have a big lead, I'm still going to be up and nervous when it gets towards the end of it because that's just the way I am. So I don't want to be relaxed on Sunday to enjoy this game. I want to enjoy it nervously because the Pittsburgh Steelers are going out there and giving us the kind of performance that we've seen the last 3 weeks and come out and just do that again. Because if you can do that again, you're going to be in a close game. And when the Pittsburgh Steelers are in a close game, something about them has just been able to pull them off. So let's just get out there and get it done. Go Steelers.
For me, it's simple. Keep the faith. Just keep the faith. That's just believe that the team can do it. Don't look at the Buffalo Bills as some daunting team. You can go all throughout the Steelers' history and have them in games where they statistically and on paper shouldn't have won, and yet they find a way to win. And also, happy birthday to my oldest daughter. She turned 13 today. I have 2 teenagers in the house. That makes me sick to my stomach. So yeah, that does it for us.
Just a couple months away from that.
I know.
Why'd you remind me?
I don't know.
I'm there. It's not fun, but it's fun.
Dude, I still have 3 that are not. So let's keep that in mind.
Yes.
So, okay, let's hope we have another one of these actually preview a game. In the meantime, Dave, why don't you send us out?
Hey.
We'll see you next week, no matter what. See you.